Welcome to Feature Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm Director of Product Marketing at VMware for our cloud providers. And today I'm joined by Gerrit Lehr from our global cloud practice, or has it changed, Gerrit?
Yeah, hi Guy. It has actually changed. It's now worldwide multi-cloud architecture and strategy team. So Gerrit Lehr, I'm a senior staff cloud system strategist in that team, supporting our cloud provider partners with new services, business models, and go-to-market.
Excellent. Thanks, Gerrit. And I apologize. There's been so many changes in organizational names. I can never keep up. Well, listen, we've had you on Feature Fridays a number of times, and you've created a number of really interesting white papers to help partners monetize and understand solutions. So we're here today to talk about the latest one.
Exactly, yeah. So a little bit of background. I mean, the idea behind the first white paper, which was I think 18 months ago already, is really that we wanted to take all the learnings from working with partners and put them in a white paper so that all partners really can consume this and get all the details behind the numbers, the business cases that we've been building. Mm-hmm. So that first white paper was on how to build a TCO model for an on-premises IaaS platform with VCD and VCF and everything that comes with that. And then we've seen that there is an additional demand for things like Tanzu and modern apps. So that is where the second white paper came from, around how to productize and bring Tanzu to market through Kubernetes as a service and manage applications and so on. And now in the most recent one, we wanted to expand that story to partners that are looking to build a multi-cloud business. So leveraging MSP services and really expanding beyond their own data center to hyperscale solutions from AWS, Azure, Google, and the likes.
Okay, all right. So let's just kind of recap. So there's two modes of delivery for a cloud provider to utilize VMware solutions. One is what we call the rental side of the business, which is running the VMware software on your hardware and your on-premise environments, your on-premise data centers. And the other is the MSP, the managed service provider route to market, where a cloud provider can utilize a solution that fundamentally someone else manages. Most of them are all VMware, but like you say, we have Google, Azure, and other hyperscale partners that they manage those infrastructures. And the interesting kind of switch is between thinking in the rental mode and thinking how to, CapEx investments, operational investments, and then going to this MSP mode where it's more about the managed service you're going to provide on top.
Exactly, and that there are a couple of different interesting aspects really to that multi-cloud idea, right? And the first really comes down to the core of what's my relationship as a VMware cloud provider partner that builds their own cloud services. What's my relationship with hyperscalers there? And it's really like a two-sided way of looking at that, really. The first one is, okay, hyperscalers are competitors, right? Because they're offering the same kind of service, maybe even in my region. They might even have more services, higher scale, they might be very price competitive. And all of that, sort of puts our partners in a competitive position with those hyperscalers. Now, in reality, what the world really, or the industry really looks like, is that a lot of partners actually go into a mode that is, in business terms, is called co-opetition with these hyperscalers. Whereas, hyperscalers also have a partner model, a channel partner model that partners can leverage in order to make use of that portfolio. So they're sort of in a situation where they are competing, but they are also leveraging the opportunity that hyperscalers give them to sort of be more successful in their own market. And the MSP program of VMware really has a strong role in that business model, where partners try to not just compete, but also cooperate with hyperscalers, as in it provides the same kind of model, leveraging SaaS services, but also provides a lot of solutions that can run on top of hyperscale clouds or can enhance hyperscale clouds, like VMware Cloud and AWS, or the whole vRealize portfolio and Cloud Health and the likes, which can actually allow partners to be more successful in combination with those hyperscalers.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing. I think often, every customer has hyperscale usage in their environment today. They also typically have a VMware environment, maybe on-premise, maybe in the cloud provider. And cloud providers often have to assist the customer not only with the cloud environment in their premise, but in general in their IT aspects as well, and looking after the hyperscale footprints that these customers have. And you're right. I mean, hyperscales have huge volumes of SKUs, many more than your standard cloud provider can even get close to kind of touching. But there's an expectation, isn't there, that customers, they want the service as quickly as they can get it on a hyperscale. Swipe the credit card and off you go. They want the convenience of pay as you go, and preferably no long-term tie-ins. And they also want the breadth of services that hyperscale provides. So in essence, cloud providers with Cloud Director can achieve quite a lot of that in terms of instant service delivery and a wide portfolio of services like you've discussed already in your other white papers. But in essence, you need the hyperscale partners to really diversify more the pieces that you can't provide in your data center, or you just, you don't have the cash ready to go and buy 1,000 GPU cards and whatever it might be, they're expensive components. So you end up having to use these environments, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's really what customers demand, like from the market and from our partners. So they really want access to this broad portfolio of services. They might have already invested in building applications in AWS and Google and so on. But there's really a pretty compelling business model for partners to build around that situation. And I can share a slide on what this looks like, really.
Sure.
So what we see here is really the situation where customers. Oh, that looks funny. There we go. Where so this is really the situation where customers might potentially want to consume services from all of these hyperscale clouds, as well as from the VMware portfolio, right? So they might already be using things like AWS Lambda for serverless computing. They might use Azure SQL for their databases, or they might use GCP BigQuery for their big data analytics workloads, whatever the use case is, right? Now, for our partners, what they can build in the long term is, first of all, they have their vCPP contract that we see here and have services in their own cloud with all the benefits, right? Data locality, data sovereignty, and really, the best IaaS services that, customers want, with all the quality and service level that, they expect from our partners, because that's what our partners are great at, right? And now, when those customers also want access to these services, which very likely they will already be using, what partners can do is, they can first of all sign a contract via the MSP program on top of the rental contract to make use of our SaaS services that are running in our cloud or in public clouds as well. So the consumption model is the same. It's a SaaS service. We operate that, and through the MSP contract, partners get access to things like VMware Cloud and AWS, Cloud Director Service, various tons of solutions, Cloud Health, vRealize Cloud, and so on. Now, going beyond what they get contractually from VMware, our partners can also leverage, the partnering on the MSP programs and contracts that those hyperscalers offer, like AWS MSP contract, Microsoft CSP is a pretty common one. Mm-hmm. And since all of these kind of contractual models work more or less the same, as in, you as a provider, you're in charge of the end-to-end customer relationship, you do billing, and you provide the terms of service. Our partners can now really act as that one central point in the middle that gives access to all these services. They can provide managed services on top. They can even build, solutions that span different clouds and abstract away all this contractual and financial complexity by consolidating everything in one contract, in one pricing bundling package, and really act as the one face to the customer across all of these clouds. So this is sort of the broad business model behind this multi-cloud idea.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at this is it's kind of essential. Most cloud providers will have like specializations in particular partners. Realistically, looking for one cloud provider to cover every hyperscaler is quite a challenge. But the services that you can get from the hyperscalers are, a lot of times very specific to their platform. And that's, I guess, where the challenge is, that a customer may come and they may have invested a lot of time and effort in Lambda. And then they need to be really using the AWS infrastructure because it's so tightly integrated with Lambda. But from a point of view of having, when you're talking about things like sovereign cloud, right, the interoperability to be able to move your applications and services from one cloud to another is really important. So you've got a way of getting out of the cloud if you need to get out of the cloud, performance, cost, whatever it might be. And as you say, our cloud providers can manage these, not only the MSP contract with VMware for the VMware kind of hyperscaler component, like Google Cloud, VMware Engine, Azure VMware Services, VMware Cloud and AWS, but they can also take over the customer's contract with those hyperscalers as well many times, and actually utilize things like the customer's credits, utilize and manage the customer services. So the hyperscalers are very used to the fact that a customer will want a partner to help them consume their hyperscale resources.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you've mentioned an important topic here with, the VMware solutions in those hyperscale clouds, right? I mean, there are two, in my point of view, there are two main use cases, and there are a couple more, but two really predominant use cases of using things like VMware Cloud and AWS or Azure VMware solutions. And the first one is geographic expansion. So I need to serve customers anywhere in the world where maybe I as a partner don't have a data center, right? And I don't want to invest in a foreign region because that, includes a lot of sunk cost and is just really, a long-term thing to do. So that's the first one, what the MSP program and those hyperscale solutions enable. And the other one is really the adjacency to all those services, right? Because realistically, it does not make sense for customers to move all their workloads to Lambda or EC2 or Azure VMs, because the majority of workloads are totally fine sitting in a VMware environment. There is no need to invest in refactoring, modernization, and so on. So with those solutions that we see in front here, everything where the VMware stack is running in hyperscale clouds, that gives you the best of both worlds, right? You can move your workloads where you need adjacency to those new services because of latency issues, for example, without the need to invest heavily in refactoring, redeveloping where it doesn't provide any business value, right? Because in a lot of cases, like going to microservices or cloud native architectures does not provide any business value. It's important for some applications, but not for all of them, probably not even for the majority of legacy applications. So those are like the two main use cases we see with those VMware on hyperscale solutions. And now through those contractual terms, partners can offer the best of both worlds, right? They have a globally available vSphere platform with adjacency to whatever cloud native services their customers might need for any given business use case.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, it's quite interesting because when you're really looking at this, you're looking at a very distributed cloud control plane. And you really need technologies that VMware provide to give you that kind of cross-cloud, hybrid cloud control when you're looking at all of these different endpoints. Otherwise, it could get a little bit out of control. Just thinking of another example, another possible use case is that a customer is developing a sales application and needs to have global availability of it. They could, maintain the application inside inside the service provider's data center, and then utilize things like AWS global load balancing services, for example, to drive traffic through there and have a segmented part of the application, perhaps hosted in VMware Cloud and AWS. But fundamentally, you're right. They don't have to always think that digital transformation is a must and I've got to do this. It can be a factor keeping your VMware workloads that are applicable and don't require transformation in the MSP's cloud on-premise, or if you need the adjacency and you need then the global presence, and you can move them into VMware Cloud and AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and others. But the important thing, I think, is that you've got a common control plane across all of these. You've got solutions like Cloud Partner Navigator, which from a cloud provider's point of view, if I'm managing all this stuff, I need somewhere that I'm going to go and provision all of this and manage all of this. You've got Cloud Director Service, which can act as a single control plane today to VMware Cloud and AWS, but in the next month or so, I think in May timeframe, we'll be bringing on Google Cloud VMware Engine and later on in 2022, Azure and Oracle and others. So you're going to have that common control plane that customers can use to provision. And you also got to bear in mind that, you may not want to have all of your digital transformation happening in one of these clouds. You could also use Tanzu and deliver Kubernetes services in your data center. That could use one of the hyperscaler functions, perhaps, to do some particular activities which may require some unique data processing requirements that only a hyperscaler can provide. And as a service provider, you then have the flexibility to do that, which is, it's very differentiated, and it gives our customers the greatest choice by far.
Yeah, that's definitely correct. And you're mentioning another really important aspect around Tanzu here, right? So beyond this, this big picture business model of leveraging all the services that are out there from all the hyperscalers, one of the misconceptions that I personally have heard in a lot of engagement is that those VMware cloud or vSphere on hyperscale solutions maybe at the first look appear to be less profitable compared to the on-prem vCPP model, right? So this is something where we've had a lot of engagements around and a lot of, had to do a lot of education towards our partners, right? Mm-hmm. And this is another thing that we are showing, or that I'm showing in that white paper in a lot of detail, is that, well, if today your vCPP, VCD cloud only runs vSphere and you have, legacy storage, legacy networking, you may not be using a lot of those, multi-cloud features that come with VMware Cloud, like HCX for workload mobility, Tanzu Mission Control, TKG, and so on. Then it may appear that, your on-prem vCPP cloud is way more profitable. However, what we've done in that white paper in, a lot of detail, and all the numbers are in the appendix and so on, is really build an apples to apples comparison between running a cloud on vSphere and VCF with vCD on-prem and VMware Cloud on AWS and CDS. And what's really important to understand is, in VMware Cloud on AWS, so there has always been vSAN, the full NSX feature set, as well as then vSphere, obviously. Mm-hmm. But there's also entitlement to use HCX in the enterprise version, which is the full feature set. And most recently, we have also added the entitlement to use Tanzu Kubernetes Grid as well as Tanzu Mission Control for Kubernetes workloads. And that has not changed the cost of VMC at all. So we're adding those features without rising the cost of VMware Cloud. Now, when you build this business case, you'll actually very likely find out that the per unit, the per virtual machine cost on VMC and CDS is fairly equal to VCD on VCF. That obviously depends on every partner-specific situation, but they definitely are comparable. Sometimes VMC is cheaper, sometimes VCF on-prem is cheaper. Now, of course, when you're coming from a single on-prem cloud mindset, you don't really need tools like HCX or Tanzu Mission Control. You very likely won't be able to extract a lot of value from that for your customers. But now, thinking back at that big picture business model we see here, when we want to provide the whole multi-cloud benefits for our customers, these tools are super important, and they are all included in VMware Cloud. Hmm. That's sort of the first takeaway from the calculations we're doing in that white paper. Now, the other super important aspect is really when it comes to global scale and giving customers choice, right? So I mentioned before, maybe your customers need to expand to different regions, or maybe, you have 3 customers and they all have a different preference towards any given hyperscaler. So they want to, move workloads to AWS, they want to move workloads to Azure and to GCP. Now, that very quickly as a partner leaves you with, 5, 10, maybe 15 locations that you alternatively would have to build for yourself if you're not leveraging the MSP program or leverage those VMware on hyperscale solutions. And that is then really when the profitability of those VMware Cloud solutions is way higher compared to building this yourself. Because with every data center location you're building, you have shared costs, you have sunk costs, you have all the overhead of having a management infrastructure and so on. And multiplying this by 5, 10, 15 really can quickly bring down your profitability to, so in the example calculations 10, 15% only. Whereas when you're staying on VMware Cloud and AWS, irrespective of how far you're scaling out, like how many locations you're offering, you'll always remain somewhere in the area of 30% in those example calculations. So it's really important when you're comparing those costs to keep that multi-cloud mindset in mind. Like, we're moving away from only offering customers one location. We want to give them those benefits of having workloads wherever they want, and that then really at scale provides you with way higher profitability options and way better margins compared to the alternative traditional rental on-prem model.
Yeah, it's a mindset change, isn't it? And I've had a number of conversations with partners about this in the past, and they're when you've got a data center set up, you've got your cloud director instance up and running, your NSX up and running, and you've got your support overheads, which many service providers consider as a sunk cost. I've got a support team of 50 individuals for my entire cloud. That's it. That's all I pay. They've actually got to change mindset really completely to look at this model and start thinking about what are the services I'm going to provide, how much I can sell those services for, and then what is the discrete unit of operational cost aligned to each unit of that service. And that's quite a significant change to the way they've been doing business traditionally, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, especially on those financial considerations, this is where where we kind of need to rethink coming from the traditional on-prem business, right? Mm-hmm. So what we see here on the left is the VCPP rental model, and on the right we see more of the MSP SaaS model. Now the main differences are first of all from a cash flow perspective, right? In the rental model, you always have a huge initial cash outflow for your hardware infrastructure, right? That money is out of your pocket until you have recovered it with revenue from selling services. Whereas in the MSP model, everything is OpEx, right? You're not going to pay us anything until you've sold something to the customer. So it's usually going to be cash flow positive from the first couple of months. So that's the first difference there. Then software is OpEx in both models. So VCPP is already doing a great job of having software as an OpEx charge. But on the infrastructure side, for rental, we still have capital expenditure for infrastructure, whereas in the MSP model, that is part of the service. So this becomes OpEx as well. You don't have to purchase assets and depreciate them. All of this is going away. And the same then, as you mentioned, with your labor costs. So having a fixed labor portion for staff that does operations, as I said, this is a fixed cost, whereas in the MSP model, the whole keeping the lights on, not so valuable stuff is part of the service as well. So everything there is turning into an OpEx, into a variable cost as well. So much for the basics of those two models. Now, yeah. What's even more important, and what is pretty new, as I have learned in most conversations, is shifting away from those traditional key metrics is when we build our business case, right? So traditionally, partners were usually looking for things like return on investment or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, EBITDA, right? Because these are metrics that tell us how well are our assets doing, how well are our investments doing, are we performing good on the investment side of our business? Now, since in the MSP model, we're not investing really, it's all OpEx. And that frees us from focusing too much on those profitability things and focusing more on growth metrics and metrics that are critical to success in a subscription business model. And these are things like customer acquisition costs, customer lifetime value, or annual recurring revenue. So there is a significant shift in mindset there from what are kind of the important metrics to focus on. Because very likely when I'm coming from an established on-prem data center business, and now I'm looking to build a multi-cloud business, first thing I want to focus on is growth, right? I'm new into that market. I'm building a new kind of business unit or a new kind of business for those multi-cloud customers. And the first thing you got to do with any new business is grow it, scale it, right? Mm-hmm. We don't want to focus too much on having high margins in the first 2-3 months. That can come once we have scaled. And this is what these metrics that you see on the right here are super important for.
I think it's there's one other thing I would add into that kind of rental model is the cost of running. I know you've got infrastructure, and I'm thinking hosts, firewalls, load balancers, also like power and cooling, the cost of actually running that data center environment, which is fairly steep most of the time. You've got, rental, power, cooling, electricity, labor, even just getting racking and all of the wiring done is quite a complex task, and you might find yourself having to buy new cabinets, etc. So that all goes away, and essentially what I can do is take what that cost would be, and then look at the MSP model, and I could say, well, all of the items you got listed there in the MSP model, that is a percentage of my sale price. I'm going to be including that OpEx cost for the infrastructure, the software, the support, and I'm going to be saying, right, if that all costs, I don't know, $1,000 per host, then I'm going to actually say that I'm going to sell this for $1,400, and that $400 is additional margin, which you can recognize pretty much straight away. So I think it's very much around what is that point I'm going to sell at, and what is the margin is important, but also, like you say, the growth. If it's only $100 margin for one customer, or one host, but if you've got 50 hosts, it suddenly becomes a much bigger number. And 50 hosts reoccurring month after month after month, predictable revenue, and then becomes a very nice thing to invest in from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, and you mentioned one super important point here, and that's the whole, racking and stacking and cabling and plumbing and everything that takes time and is sometimes hard to predict, how long is this going to take to stand up the environment, how quickly can I react, right? So there's one slide here, and I'll explain what all of this means because it looks a bit busy. So basically what this is telling us, and this is based on a couple of studies from McKinsey's and others, is that, we always focus on budget and on initial cost when we're building up a new cloud business. Now, what a lot of studies have shown is even if you're like 50% over budget in setting up a new service, over the long term, this is only going to cut into 4% of your profit that's going away. So 50% more cost over the long term costs you 4% of profit or margin. Now, on the other hand, time to market is really the critical point when it comes to maximizing margins, because what we see here in the second sentence is if your product or service is 6 months late to market over 5 years service lifetime, that's going to cost you 33% of profit, right? So picture this, with 50% over budget, that's not as bad, but with 6 months, after the timeline, that's 33% of profit gone. And I didn't know this, right? And I think a lot of people don't recognize that. They always focus on cost, but time to market is way more critical, apparently. And this is really what the MSP service or the MSP solutions through our program bring you, right? There is instant time to market because the services are just there. You don't need to wait for procurement, for your suppliers, for the engineers to set this up, testing, documentation. That's all going away. So you have instant time to market whenever you need to launch a service. And then over the long run, this is going to have a significant impact on your profitability.
I'm just smiling to myself, remembering some of the data center builds I did in my earlier part of my career, and getting the networking in even would take months. And then you want resilient networking, different suppliers, different access entries, and oh wow, UPS, everything. It's a huge lift to actually go and build a new data center environment. And yeah, so time to market. Obviously, point number 2 here is if you're faster to market, you're going to have all of that additional monthly recurring revenue growth over that term, which is going to, I can see the 33. I think that's quite lenient, actually. I'd imagine it's probably more than that. But again, it's about that change in attitudes and change in, I think, really understanding or becoming a different sort of provider. Going from this heavy operational view, which you've optimized as much as you can, but at the end of the day, it's still something that is quite a significant infrastructure investment. It's an operational weight to carry, and it's providing you, sovereignty. It's providing you security, performance, everything else. But if you want to then look at expanding for those use cases we discussed, like expanding into different markets, providing adjacency, and still stay on the VMware platform, then the MSP route to market, I think the average time of spinning up a host in VMC is something like 15 minutes.
Yeah, somewhere around 12, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can get your cloud director resource pool expanded in, let's say, 16 minutes.
Yeah.
And, that's incredible. And this is way different, I think, than hyperscale, where you're looking at t-shirt sizing, you look at commits for discounts, and you don't have that concept of resource pooling, which I think is critical. Because another thing that, you're looking at on the previous slide is you're looking at that consolidation moving from that, you could use the host model, the SDDC host model in these hyperscale partners, or you could use Cloud Director Service and use a resource pool model. Exactly. And that means you can address different customer sizes. You can take on really small, like 4 VM customers, to really large, hundreds of VM customers. But you're consolidating that, you're how do I explain it? You're really optimizing that hardware investment, because you can run multiple customers on the same hardware in any size and dynamically scale at any time.
Yeah, exactly. And there are two sides to this, right? I mean, the first one is, as you said, optimizing your hardware costs through, all these mechanisms and allocation models that Cloud Director Service provides. But the other one is also, ensuring that your customers are always satisfied, because if you need more capacity or you need more performance, you can instantly add new hosts, which ultimately is going to, increase the customer satisfaction and reduce churn, right? Mm. So when we look a little bit closer into those, subscription financial metrics that are important when I want to grow a business and I want to really build on a subscription model. So as I said, ROI and EBITDA become less important. What becomes important, you can see this on the left side, is first of all, customer acquisition costs, right? So how much money do I need to spend on sales and marketing in order to get my customer on my platform, right? This is the first kind of thing that's important. And once that initial sales and marketing cost is recovered, so that's the time to recover CAC, then I have a break-even point, right? From that moment on, I'm becoming profitable. And since we're not making, a one-time deal where, you're selling a service for a year, it's a subscription model, right? We're earning money as long as the customer stays on my platform. And this is then where I really want to maximize the customer lifetime value that I see here on the right. So customer lifetime value is a function of, the average revenue per customer times the margin that I have on my services. And the key here is avoiding churn. So I want to make sure my customer is always satisfied and never leaves my platform. So through the MSP model in particular, and through cloud services in general, how can I optimize these subscription business metrics? So first of all, on the customer acquisition cost. So let's say my customer is not 100% sure if they want to join my platform. I need to run a POC somewhere on the other side of the world, because that's where they have subsidiaries. Through the MSP program, I can do that, right? I can run demos, POCs, marketing activities in locations all around the world with no upfront investment, simply by spinning up an MSP service wherever I need it, right? So this is going to bring down my marketing and sales costs just to convince the customer that this is a great solution, compared to, I need a lab, I don't have that in that location. It's like a demo POC, it's not the real environment. So this is going to, drive down your customer acquisition cost or optimize it, right? And from there, in the green, once the customer is on your platform, we can first of all, leverage all the great features that partners are already familiar with, like App Launchpad, to give customers access to a self-service catalog of additional services that then, increase consumption of the platform, because it's easy for customers to spin up new services and, utilize more resources. And even more on the margin side, like through the MSP program and the portfolio of services, we can instantly offer not just infrastructure as a service like VMware Cloud, but higher value added services like Cloud Health, Tanzu, vRealize, Carbon Black, which typically, because they're higher up in the stack, will have higher margins, right? Those are higher differentiated services, so they'll increase my margin, and that then ultimately, maximizes my customer lifetime value. And then the last one is really, keeping customers satisfied by having instant scale. I can always make sure my platform performs optimally. If something breaks, there'll be a new host within minutes. If they need to scale out or they need, some extra area for specific workloads, I can provide that straight away. So it's way easier to keep my customers satisfied on those scalable cloud services. And that then reduces churn and, leads to more customer lifetime value. This is sort of, how those MSP services contribute to optimization of those subscription margins, metrics. So.
Yeah, there's a few things I just want to dive into here. And starting on the left, the customer acquisition costs. So you mentioned investment in marketing and sales and POCs and things like that. So from an acquisition perspective, I look at what our partners do today in terms of marketing. And I do believe there are partners out there doing a very good job of it, but there are an awful lot of partners who aren't looking at marketing in the way they need to be looking at marketing, and still taking a fairly kind of buyer journey 1.0 kind of approach to things, where it's heavy sales fronted and a really close interaction with the customer. Whereas when we're talking about SaaS services, cloud providers need to perhaps look at a little bit different client base as well, and the opportunity that it presents them. I think here there should be much more investment in digital marketing, investment in things like propensity to buy, tooling, and focusing on a buyer 2.0 journey, which is basically that sales don't really get involved until really when they need to, when a contract needs to be signed. You've got to be able to educate the customer on all of your services and provide, references and comparisons and things like that to really enable the customer to do most of this journey themselves. So you reduce your sales costs, but you increase your marketing cost. And I think that's important because, as you said, when you're looking at the lifetime value and you want to differentiate services, there's services like I did a couple of episodes recently on vRealize Cloud portfolio. We've done vRealize Network Insight Cloud, vRealize Operations Cloud. We're going to be doing vRealize Log Insight Cloud in the next couple of weeks. And there's some fantastic additional, just at the infrastructure and application level, value that you can provide in these environments. And I think if you include those in your portfolio, or you upsell them at a later date as a clear path for the partner, for the customer to be on, you've got to really increase your marketing in that effect and understand what is available from a POC environment. What can I demo easily? How do I automate that? Can I provide trials in any simple way where I can spin up and spin down and automate? And another critical thing I just wanted to dive in on as well, when we talk about scalability, we're talking about 12 minutes to add a new host. That's amazing. That's fantastic. And it's all secure and everything's done. And that's the type of automation that you'd kind of expect from a hyperscale partner. The interesting thing is that scale up and scale down is also viable. And you only pay for the hosts that you're using in these hyperscalers. So if you want to, if you've got a customer that's got particular activity that's going to be time bound, you can scale up for that time, and the moment they don't need it anymore, scale back down. They're very happy you've met their requirements. You're very happy because you're not paying for excess hosts that you don't need anymore. And you've dynamically shrunk that environment back down to how it needs to be, using technologies like Cloud Direct to Service and stuff. So it really does provide that complete flexibility in the life cycle. But I really think that cloud providers need to have a good look at how they're marketing their services today, and really think about how, if they do start doing MSP services and SaaS services from using VMware's portfolio or any SaaS portfolio, how are they marketing that? Are they addressing the right personas? Are they taking their buyers on the right journey? Are they enabling their buyers? Are they still spending a lot of time in sales cycles, which are long and arduous and slow? Those are the type of things that I think really need to be focused at as well.
Yeah, and I've had plenty of discussions with partners, in the last 12 months probably, where, they were moving away from, hey, we are more or less a hosting company, we answer RFPs, and then we onboard a customer for a 3-year contract, more to, hey, look, we want to be a real cloud provider. So what do we need to do in order to get our customers more self-sufficient, which is really at the heart of this buyer 2.0 kind of journey, right? We want to enable our customers to, be self-sufficient and be able to handle the platform when they want without us as a provider really being involved, right? Because if I need a new service, I don't want to call up my partner, I want to do it myself, right? And I mean, that obviously involves discussions around, okay, self-service portals, how is that, usable in an intuitive way, but also around things like documentation. So, providing the right guidance on how this can actually be done. Of course, documentation is a big part of that. Mm-hmm. And then marketing, to bring customers on that platform and also help them understand the value of additional services, right? So they might come in as an IaaS customer, and then through my, more advanced marketing activities, they might encounter that, we also have services like We Realize or Cloud Health and so on. And like through that marketing messaging, they need to understand how this provides value. And then, through the documentation, they need to understand how to leverage that. And then through self-service portals like CPN and CDS, they need to be able to use those services effectively, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also when we compare that to the the legacy model, let's say I'm an IaaS provider that works, right? But I feel like my customers might be able to extract value from the We Realize portfolio. Now, in the rental model, what I'll need to do is I'll need to set this up. I'm making the assumption that this is going to be successful. I do not know. I need to set this up, stand up the environment, train my people, skill my people, and do marketing and sales and everything. And potentially, my customers won't buy it for whatever reason, right? Maybe they have other tools, they don't understand the tool, whatever, right? Now in the MSP model, that's not a problem, right? Because I have not invested significant amount of money to get the service up and running. I just offer it. If the customer needs it, cool. That's when I pay. That's when I, have my cash outflow. If not, then I haven't lost anything.
Yeah. Then you raise a good point as well. Something I wanted to kind of ask you. A lot of cloud providers I talk to, particularly in the VCD space, actually, they tend to just bundle their service together, and the value of things like edge firewalling, microsegmented firewalling, load balancing is kind of just shoehorned into this one cost. And they're not actually monetizing then the additional features uniquely. How should that change when they go to an MSP environment where they're selling discrete, or should they be selling discrete units of per firewall charge, or should they just be selling an SDDC environment? How should that really be monetized properly?
Yeah, and that's a good discussion I have, like especially when it comes to NSX monetization, right? So what I'm hearing a lot is, look, we've sold a full package to our customers through the RFP, right? And they don't care if there's NFX Enterprise or Advanced or Professional. They don't care if there's distributed firewall or not. And this is why, coming from that hosting all-inclusive RFP-ish mindset, this is why monetizing a lot of these services seems pretty hard, if doable at all, right? Mm-hmm. So, and comparing that with the tendency of a lot of customers asking for self-service and more autonomy as well, what I typically advise most partners is, look, simply build both, right? So start with offering a low-cost self-service platform, including documentation and everything, and then monetize on a pretty granular basis, right? So this can be for NSX on a per edition basis or on a per feature basis. Just make your customers aware through a SKU list and documentation that if you click this button, it's going to cost you, right? This is what AWS, what everyone else does. So, and if customers are fine with that, that's awesome. You have, you can monetize those features as customers use them and need them. However, if your customer figures out that this is too complex, they don't understand this, they don't want to manage all of this themselves, in a hyperscale world, they're lost, right? There is no answer to that. But you as a cloud provider in the VMware ecosystem, you can simply say, okay, you're on the self-service option now, but we have a managed service option as well. So, pay me for fully managed service. I'll take care of all of that. And that's then really, a bundled approach where the customer does not really need to understand, is there NSX Enterprise? How have I configured that firewall? Partner's going to do that for them and hand it all out in, one fully managed bundle with one price tag. And they have the choice then, really, right? It's the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And it can be quite a challenge, though, when you look at discrete unit billing to actually, we talk about a customer clicking on something and, getting charged for it. In a lot of cases, certainly there isn't that pop up saying, hey, you're now going to be charged for this. Do you wish to proceed, sort of thing. It's more around the back end, and then the agreement the service provider would have with the customer that we charge X per firewall, etc. And that needs to be kind of covered, I think, and explained, because that could be an area where there may be some confusion as well.
Yeah, and there is a lot of confusion around that in the hyperscale world, right? Like this is this typical sticker shock when you fire up your AWS account with a bunch of services, and suddenly you get a bill with 1 million SKUs that no one can understand, and the amount is like 5 times higher than you had anticipated. That's exactly what happens, right? And I think partners want to make this easier while still giving customers that level of freedom, but then optionally offer an alternative route on top through managed services.
Yeah, quite. Okay. So Garrett, then the white paper is exploring these different aspects of monetization in MSP, is that right?
Exactly, yeah. So it looks at the options for managed services, comparing that to on-prem rental models. It explains all of those metrics and how to optimize that, and really works around 3 use cases. One is multi-cloud mobility. The second one is app modernization, and the third one is global expansion.
Okay, cool. So the advice being here then, if you're looking at broadening your portfolio or you need to work with any one of those use cases, then have a look at the white paper first to make sure you understand how you should be positioning this and calculating how much it's going to cost you, to make sure that you don't end up with a cost model that's not appropriate for the solution.
Yeah, and really, so we have a couple of example calculations, rental versus MSP, and how this makes maybe more sense in MSP once you scale globally. And the last final piece of the white paper is really an important discussion that I've had as well, and that's around, let me jump to that slide. That's around the aspect of the inevitable trade-off between profitability and growth, right? So what happens is, in a lot of discussions around VMC and building a multi-cloud business model, there's always, okay, but we need to have this margin and need to be that profitable, which of course makes sense from a business perspective long term. But I think what people not always understand is, look, you come from an established business and now you're building a new side business, which is multi-cloud based on MSP, right? And for any new business, the number one goal is not profit, it's growth, right? You want to scale your business as quickly as possible, because we learned time to market is important for long-term profitability. If you're not growing, if you're not onboarding customers, your business is going to look bad on paper forever, right? And the key metric to be aware of here is the ratio of customer lifetime value to customer acquisition cost. So when you look at subscription economics and studies of that, there is always this mentioning of this ratio should be somewhere between 3 to 1 and 5 to 1. Now, what this means is, if you have a lower ratio, that means that you are growing very slowly and it's taking you forever to really recover the cost of onboarding a customer. However, if your ratio is too high, this can indicate the potential to maximize your growth through marketing and sales spending. But that, of course, goes at the cost of less profitability. So if I want to grow fast, my operating margin will not look awesome. But the idea is really, when you start a new multi-cloud business, don't look too much on the margins, on the profitability yet. Focus on growth, invest a lot in sales and marketing and customer self-enablement, grow your business to a large customer base, and then, bring down your marketing and sales costs to optimize your margin across a super large customer base that's hopefully going to stay forever, unless they leave the platform because they're dissatisfied, right? So that's then when you really optimize your margin overall. Grow first and then optimize the margin. So this is a discussion that comes up a lot as well when talking about where to put a lot of money for those new multi-cloud businesses.
Yeah, okay, so I'm kind of understanding that. And the customer acquisition value here, what we're saying is actually you're going to invest quite a lot in your customer acquisition value to start with, because it's investment in marketing, more investment in marketing than in sales, investment in systems and the portfolio design, that type of thing. And then you've got your lifetime value, which if you've done it properly, you should get customers on board fairly quickly, not too quickly, but not too slowly. But you also then should be increasing the amount they spend on not just the volume growth of a particular SKU, but on new SKUs as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also about, like when you invest a lot in marketing and sales, that's bad for your profitability, right? In the first, couple of months. But once you have a large customer base in a subscription business, they're going to stay forever, right? So that's then when you can recover that lost margin by, helping them or optimizing your margin with those customers, because you don't have additional marketing costs once they're on the platform. All you need to do is keep them satisfied, maybe upsell them a little bit. That's then when you optimize the margin and recover that cost.
Yeah. And at that point, you'll have, the managed services kicking in, all the additional value you'll be getting there as well. So that's, again, I guess that's another acquisition cost that you're going to have to build in is getting the right skills and resources and paying the right FTEs to kind of be on board to provide those managed services to your customers.
Yeah, but those will typically have higher margins than the infrastructure itself, right? So just to maximize your profit. Yeah.
So, I mean, my kind of rule of thumb is if you can make the infrastructure profitable, then the managed services will be a very easy upsell and, increase your profit exponentially, because there's lower investment in that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. Okay, Garrett. Well, any final words about this paper?
No, you can find it on Partner Connect, I think. So I'm assuming we'll put links in the...
Yeah, the link will be in the video.
Yeah, there's also an upcoming session at Empower. So in all 3 geographies, there'll be a session on that topic as well. So if you're interested to learn more, just attend that Empower session.
Brilliant. Garrett, thank you very much. It's been really good to talk to you. And I'm so pleased you're writing all these white papers. I think it's really good to try and help our partners along their journeys here. So thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Cheers.